Hey, Nathan here from PH Studios, and welcome back to another tower defense tutorial. Last tutorial, we coded the game over screen, and in this tutorial, we're going to go to the help screen. But before we do that, I'm going to demonstrate the game over screen by adding it to the screen system and letting us view it. So, let's go to the Solution Explorer, and in the Content section, we need to add a new font for what the game over screen references. So we called it menu. So let's right click the fonts and go to add new item, and let's select a sprite font and let's call it menu. And then we can change all this stuff later on. We're just gonna look at the game over screen. The text might be a little bit big for the game over screen, but again, this is just a demonstration. Now let's go ahead and go into the tower defense game and let's comment that out, and let's add screen system.add screen, and we're going to give it a new game over screen. Now that needs to accept the level selection screen, so let's just do new level selection screen. Alright, now let's press F5 and let's see if it'll run. Oh, I forgot another parentheses. Alright, so it failed because I misspelled the word textures here. Just make sure that it's spelled correctly. And then run it, and this is what the game over screen looks like. So there we go. So that is the game over screen end result. Now let's go back to the game and let's delete this line. Let's uncomment that line and let's work on the help screen. Okay. Now I apologize if anything is out of place when I do my recordings. The mouse is jittery on this. I upgraded to Windows 8 and it looks like I've always had issues with Camtasia Studio 8. I have no idea why. But I'll probably uninstall it again and install Camtasia Studio 7. But for this tutorial, I'm using Camtasia Studio 8, so I apologize if anything looks weird or the quality is a little bit weird and stuff like that. Alright, so let's get started with the help screen. So we're going to add a few fields up top, and they're going to be, we need to reference the game screen, so we need to reference the screen, basically the parent. What screen made the help screen appear? It's going to be, we're going to call it the screen before. And just like any screen that we want to display font, we need to make a sprite font object. So we're going to call that just font. We're going to provide screenshots, so we need a whole bunch of texture 2D objects. So we're going to create a list of texture 2D, and those are going to be called help textures. We're going to provide the screenshots so we can display the user interface and how it works. Then we're going to have a couple of integers, the count of the help textures and the index, the current index we want to display, the current picture we want to display. So we're going to go ahead and add those attributes up top. So we added the game screen, the sprite font to the list of texture 2Ds, the integer, which is just the count of the textures we have in here, and the index, the current texture we are viewing. Alright, accepts input. We're going to accept input on here. Return true. Now, we're going to have a constructor. Before we get to the draw screen, we're going to have a constructor. So we're going to have public help screen, open parentheses, game screen, and then before. Remember, this is the screen that called the help screen, so we can reactivate it once we're done with the help screen. Screen before is equal to before. Okay, so now we have initialized screen, and I'm going to move this draw screen. I'm going to cut that. Now I'm going to move it after update. I just like to keep initialize as first, update, and then draw. I just like that structure. You might prefer a different structure. So initialize screen, we're going to set up our input map again. Okay, so we're going to set up input map.newAction and then open the parentheses and a quote. And then we're going to have finished, comma, end quote, comma. And it's going to be a keys. So we're going to type in the word keys, and then we need to add using Microsoft.xnative.framework.input. So we're going to add that keys, and we're going to put a dot here, and then it's going to be the escape key. We're going to press the escape key for finished. Alright, now we need to have another input action. So input map dot new action, and then we're going to call it next. And it's going to be keys dot space, or whatever you want to do to advance it. I'm choosing escape for finished and space for next. Okay. Now, help textures count is going to be 3. We're going to load 3 textures in there. And let's set index is equal to 0. And help textures is equal to new list. And we're going to initialize the list accepts a multiple parameters, multiple overloads. So we're going to choose the second one to give it an initial capacity of help texture count. Alright, so now this is going to be a screen that will fade. So we need to call and enable fade. Alright, now we need to provide a color. So you can just type in the word color, and then we need to add using Microsoft.xnative.framework. So we're going to choose color.black. You can choose a different color, any color you want. And I'm going to choose 85% opacity. So 0.85 for floating, and then closing parentheses and semicolon. So we're setting up our input map to watch for escape and space keys that represent the finished and next actions. And then we are only loading 3 textures in. We're setting the index to 0, so we just look at the very first texture we load in. And then our help textures, we're going to initialize the list with the initial capacity of help textures count. And then we are going to enable the fading effect on this screen. Okay, now update screen. This is where we check our input map. So if input map dot new action press, it's a brand new press. We're not pressing it, we're not holding it down, it's a brand new press. So finished. We pressed escape, we're not holding it down, it's a new escape press. So it's finished. Opening, closing curly brackets, and we're going to exit screen. And then we're going to activate the screen before dot activate screen. Alright, so that's the finished action. Now let's work on the next action. If input map dot new action press, action name is next. Opening, closing curly brackets. If index is greater than or equal to help textures count -1. Remember the way that the arrays, and we can use lists like we use arrays. The first texture we load in is going to be index 0. So we're loading in 3 textures, but the indices are going to be 0, 1, 2. So this gives our count 3 minus 1. So 2 is the last index of our list. So opening, closing curly bracket. So if it's greater than that or equal to that, we're going to set it as equal to 0. Else, we are going to do index plus plus. So why are we doing this? Why aren't we looking for if it's 3 instead of 2? If it's 2, if the index is 2 already, we are displaying the last image we loaded, according to the code here. You might have 10 pictures you might want to use. But for my game, I only have 3, so if it's at index 2, then we press the space or the next action. If it's already equal to or greater than this, 2 in this case, it's going to become 3. In that case, we want it to revert back to 0. Now, if it is 0, 1, 0 or 1, we're going to increase it. So that's what we're doing here. Draw screen. This is pretty simple. Sprite batch is equal to screen system dot sprite batch. Screen system has a reference to the sprite batch we use. Sprite batch dot draw help textures bracket. We're going to use this like we use an array, so we need a bracket and the index, which we have the index hit there. Close bracket, comma, new rectangle, 0, 0, 1280, 720. We are targeting 1280 by 720 resolution. Later, when I patch the game to support dynamic resolutions, we will discuss how to convert this to support that feature. Color.white. Oops. Capital C color. Color.white. Closing parentheses, semicolon. Sprite batch.draw string. Use this font we have up top. Press space to advance to the next image. Again, if you use a different keyboard or gamepad or anything like that, you will want to change space to the appropriate action. Vector2.0. It's going to be at the 0, 0 vector. And we're going to set it to color.red. You will want to use a different color to what blends in nice with your images. Alright, last but not least, right before the update screen, let's do a public override void load content. We're going to load the content, delete the base.load content. It's a direct derivative of game screen, so that does not do any loading. Content manager. Then we need to add the using Microsoft.xna.framework.content. I'm just going to call it content. And the screen system has a reference to the content manager. Loading our sprite font. So font is equal to content.load sprite font quote fonts / help. We're going to call it the help font. Okay, so now we're loading the sprite font. That's what we can use to display our press space to advance to the next image. Now let's load our textures. For int I is equal to 0. I is less than help textures count. I plus plus. Now the way I set mine up, the textures start with help, underscore, and the index plus 1. The index plus 1, so it's help underscore 1, help underscore 2, and help underscore 3. So in order to do loading like that in a for loop, you'll want to have some way to distinguish between the multiple two or more images. In this case, I'm using an integer 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So help textures dot add content dot load. It's a texture 2D, and it's going to be a string dot format. It's going to be from the textures folder, help subfolder. It's going to be help underscore the variable I want to use. So help underscore 1, help underscore 2, help underscore 3 are the pictures we will be loading. End quote, comma, and then the index in the loop, the current iteration, plus 1. Alright, so that is what we do to load the content. Now, I believe I gave you the help textures. They are there. Alright, now let's add our font, our help font, and we're just going to do the same thing. Right-click fonts, go to add, new item, and let's call it, what do we name it? Just help? Yeah, we're just going to call it help. So just call it help.sprite font and then add, and then leave the defaults for now. We're going to change everything later. And just close that out, and let's go to the tower defense game, and let's do this. Comment out the screen system.add screen line in the initialize method, and let's add another line, screen system.add screen, new help screen, and then the screen before is just going to be I just added the new video intro screen as the screen before, just so we can see the result. Okay, so now press F5 and let's see what happens. So it brings up the game, and it brings up our pictures. At the top it says press space to advance to the next image. So we press space. Alright, that's a second image. Press space again. Okay, that's a third image. Press space again, and it should be the first one. So we can keep on pressing space, and it will cycle through every image. Now we press escape, and we're done. Alright, so that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm gonna keep on doing that, where I show you the result after each video. So for this one, I had to show you the result of the game over screen from the first video, because somebody just suggested I do that, and that was a good idea to do. So I'll be adding that to the end of each video. Also, somebody mentioned that when I go into the Solution Explorer, it's just when I get into my tutorials, I open up the Solution Explorer, or sometimes it's open already, and I expand it so you can get to the ad and then see where I'm going. And sometimes I forget to close it. I will try to keep that in mind. I'll try to close it so you can see more of the code. But if I leave it open and the code does go into a horizontal mode, I usually try to go back there and then press enter and make it so it's all visible anyway. But I'll try to keep that in mind. as well. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Next tutorial, again, we're going from the top to the bottom. So next tutorial will be the level selection screen. That's probably going to be the biggest screen we will develop for this game, because the engine doesn't take care of the level selection screen. The engine gives us the information for our maps, but we need to build a way to view it. So the level selection screen is going to be quite a massive class. And this video was split up into 6 parts again. Just a lot of interruptions again. I did listen to the first part where I mentioned that I upgraded to Windows 8, and my audio is, I'm still tweaking the audio for each part, so I apologize if it's loud and then quiet and then super quiet and then loud again. I try to keep it all the same, but I'm still experimenting. Everything is all reset. It's just like I got my microphone again, that I had to play with my microphone levels. So I apologize if it was a little trouble to hear at some parts. I did add some callouts to the video to explain that I upgraded to Windows 8, and while I record, the mouse goes all freaky. It just blinks in and out randomly, and just the overall graphics, like moving window, that just runs very horrible as I record. However, it looks fine on your end when you are viewing the video. So I might keep Camtasia Studio 8 installed. It is much better than it was on Windows 7. When I had it on Windows 7, it would disable my theme, my desktop theme, and give me the Windows 7 basic theme. And it was even worse. The mouse would just go nuts, even worse, and moving windows, it just was not very nice. So I stuck with Camtasia Studio 7 on the Windows 7 side, and so far it seems to run pretty well on Windows 8. I don't know if it's an ATI graphics card issue, or I don't know what's going on. I was talking back and forth with TechSmith about Windows 7, and they weren't aware of any issues. They told me to configure Camtasia Studio 8 to record just like it was Camtasia Studio 7, but even that gave me a display issue. So it was just something up with the way that it worked, and it's probably a ATI driver or something like that. Some issue with this current card I have. I'm not sure. But anyway, I just wanted to give you that information in case something does happen down the line and I'm recording, and all of a sudden you see my mouse go in and out, jittery, and all that stuff. That's probably what's going on. But I've seen all 5 parts. This is the 6th part, and so far the mouse looks perfectly fine on your end. So I'm going to stick with it. It's a much better recording experience than version 7 was. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next time for the level selection screen.